In the 15th century, when the bells of Venice echoed across canals, crowded with merchant galleys and armored escorts returning from distant seas, when silk from the east brushed against German steel in the markets around the Rialto, and when the Republic of Venice stood like a glittering jewel balanced precariously between unimaginable wealth and mortal danger, men such as Domenico Trevisan were born into a world where politics was warfare conducted with smiles, where diplomacy was often deadlier than battle, and where noble families carried the fate of empires in their blood. The Venetian Republic during this era was not merely a city-state floating upon lagoons. It was a maritime empire whose ships controlled trade routes stretching from the Adriatic to the Levant, whose ambassadors whispered in the courts of kings and sultans alike, and whose merchants grew rich upon spices, salt, silk, slaves, grain, and information. For Venice understood earlier than most kingdoms that knowledge itself could become a weapon sharper than any sword forged in Milan or Toledo. Among the great patrician families that shaped this republic stood the House of Trevisan, an ancient Venetian lineage whose members served as senators, admirals, diplomats, governors, and defenders of the republic during centuries when Venice battled rivals on every frontier, from the Ottoman Turks in the east to ambitious Italian powers on the mainland, and from pirates upon the sea to conspirators hidden within the palaces themselves. Domenico Trevisan emerged from this world not as a mythic conqueror crowned beneath golden arches, but as something perhaps more fascinating and more dangerous, a Venetian aristocrat navigating an age where survival depended upon intelligence, adaptability, ruthless political instinct, and unwavering loyalty to La Serenissima, the most serene republic. His life unfolded during a period when Europe itself trembled beneath transformation, when Constantinople had fallen to the Ottomans in 1453 and sent shockwaves through Christendom, when gunpowder was beginning to shatter medieval warfare, when ambitious monarchs sought centralized power, while old republics fought desperately to preserve their fragile independence, and when the Mediterranean became a battlefield between crescent and cross, between Venice and the expanding Ottoman Empire led by formidable sultans whose armies appeared unstoppable. To understand Domenico Trevisan is to understand Venice itself, magnificent yet anxious, wealthy yet vulnerable, cultured yet merciless, a republic that celebrated commerce and beauty while simultaneously preparing for war against enemies that seemed to multiply with every passing decade. And within this glittering and dangerous world, Domenico Trevisan learned early that noble birth alone guaranteed nothing, because Venice respected success more than ancestry, and failure, even among the highest families, could lead not merely to disgrace, but to ruin. The Trevisan family belonged to that exclusive class of Venetian patricians whose names were inscribed within the Libro d'Oro, the Golden Book, the registry that determined who possessed the legal right to participate in the government of Venice after the Serrata del Maggia Consiglio, the closing of the Great Council during the late 13th century, which transformed Venice into an oligarchic republic dominated by hereditary noble families. Unlike monarchies ruled by kings, whose authority flowed from bloodline and divine symbolism, Venice functioned through a remarkably intricate political system designed specifically to prevent any single individual from becoming too powerful, because the Venetians feared tyranny above nearly everything else, having learned through centuries of survival that concentrated authority could destroy the republic from within. Thus the Doge, despite his splendor and ceremonial magnificence, ruled under heavy restrictions, while councils, committees, magistracies, and secretive institutions, such as the Council of Ten, monitored every aspect of political life with relentless vigilance. Young noblemen like Domenico Trevisan therefore entered adulthood within a culture unlike almost any other in Europe, because Venetian aristocrats were expected not only to preserve family prestige, but also to serve the Republic through administration, diplomacy, military command, commercial oversight, or colonial governance. The Trevisans accumulated influence through generations of such service, building alliances with other noble houses while carefully navigating the factional rivalries that dominated Venetian politics. where friendships shifted like tides and fortunes could rise or collapse depending upon military victories, trade agreements, or the outcome of distant wars. Domenico's youth would have unfolded amid the rituals and expectations of Venetian patrician society, surrounded by marble palaces overlooking narrow canals, educated in Latin, rhetoric, commerce, law, and political theory, taught to negotiate, to calculate risk, to conceal emotion behind courtesy, and above all to place the survival of Venice above personal ambition. Yet beneath the elegance of Venetian civilization lurked constant fear. The Ottoman Empire expanded relentlessly across the eastern Mediterranean. The papacy maneuvered endlessly for influence. Italian states betrayed one another with astonishing regularity. France and the Holy Roman Empire competed for dominance in Italy. Pirates threatened shipping lanes. Plague haunted crowded cities, and trade itself, the source of Venetian prosperity, depended upon fragile agreements that could collapse overnight. This atmosphere forged men who were simultaneously cultured and calculating, sophisticated and ruthless. Domenico Trevisan belonged to this world completely. By the time Domenico Trevisan entered public life, the greatest geopolitical reality shaping Venetian policy was the rise of the Ottoman Empire. The fall of Constantinople to Mehmed II in 1453 had horrified Europe. Yet for Venice the catastrophe carried particularly terrifying implications, because Venetian merchants and colonies throughout the eastern Mediterranean suddenly found themselves confronting an empire whose military power dwarfed that of most Christian states. Venice had long profited through commerce with the Islamic world, maintaining pragmatic relationships even amid religious conflict. But now pragmatism became a necessity for survival. Ottoman armies advanced through the Balkans. Ottoman fleets challenged Venetian dominance at sea. Ottoman governors eyed Venetian possessions in Greece and the Adriatic. And every Venetian senator understood that another disastrous war could cripple the Republic economically and militarily. It was in this climate that nobles like Domenico Trevisan operated, balancing diplomacy and military preparedness in a world where one failed negotiation could lead to invasion, siege, or naval catastrophe. Venetian diplomacy became extraordinarily sophisticated during this era precisely because the Republic lacked the manpower to win prolonged wars easily against massive continental powers. Ambassadors gathered intelligence constantly. Spies moved through ports and courts. Merchants reported military rumors alongside commercial information, and noblemen serving abroad acted simultaneously as diplomats, financiers, political observers, and agents of the state. The Venetians developed one of Europe's earliest highly organized intelligence systems because information meant survival. Domenico Trevisan's career unfolded within this intricate machinery of statecraft. He belonged to a ruling elite that understood warfare only through battlefield courage, but through logistics, alliances, espionage, naval preparedness, and economic leverage. And yet, despite Venetian caution, war repeatedly erupted. Too often later generations imagined Venice merely as a city of masked carnivals, romance, and artistic splendor, forgetting that beneath the music and marble existed a republic hardened by centuries of conflict. Venetian galleys were instruments of war as much as trade. Its admirals fought brutal campaigns across the Mediterranean. Its colonial governors suppressed rebellions ruthlessly. Its courts employed torture and secret investigations when state security appeared threatened, and its noble class understood violence intimately. When conflicts with the Ottoman Empire intensified, Venetian commanders faced an enemy renowned for discipline, artillery, and relentless expansion. Battles in the eastern Mediterranean were not abstract contests between distant rulers. They were savage struggles over islands, ports, fortresses, trade routes, and survival itself. One can imagine Domenico Trevisan attending tense sessions within the Venetian Senate, while reports arrived describing Ottoman fleets moving through contested waters, describing Christian strongholds under siege, describing merchants ruined by interrupted commerce, and describing villages burned amid campaigns that stretched from Greece to the Adriatic. Venice often stood terrifyingly alone. European alliances proved unreliable. Popes called for crusades that frequently dissolved into political squabbling. Kings promised aid while pursuing their own ambitions elsewhere. Thus, Venice learned to rely primarily upon itself. And men like Domenico Trevisan bore the burden of preserving the Republic through calculation, sacrifice, and endurance. Unlike royal courts dominated by dynastic succession, Venice functioned through controlled competition among noble families, which created an atmosphere of perpetual intrigue hidden beneath layers of ceremony and etiquette. Political advancement required alliances. Alliances required negotiation. Negotiation required compromise, and compromise often demanded betrayal. The Venetian political system was brilliantly stable compared to many European monarchies, yet stability came at the cost of constant surveillance and suspicion. The feared Council of 10 monitored threats against the Republic with extraordinary authority. Anonymous accusations could trigger investigations. Informants operated quietly. Correspondence might be intercepted. Foreign powers attempted bribery, and ambitious nobles maneuvered carefully, knowing that public disgrace could destroy entire families. Domenico Trevisan therefore lived within a political culture where words mattered enormously, where silence could be strategic, and where appearances concealed deeper struggles for influence. Inside Venetian palaces illuminated by candlelight reflected upon polished marble floors, senators debated war expenditures, colonial defenses, diplomatic missions, taxation, naval construction, and trade privileges, while secretly calculating how each decision might strengthen or weaken rival factions. The atmosphere must have felt electric during moments of crisis. Imagine messengers arriving breathless from distant ports. Imagine maps spread across heavy wooden tables. Imagine old noblemen arguing fiercely about whether Venice should negotiate, fight, or delay. Imagine younger aristocrats hungry for glory demanding stronger action, while cautious veterans remembered the terrible cost of previous wars. And somewhere within these storms of political tension stood Domenico Trevisan, navigating a republic whose survival depended upon balancing ambition with restraint. The Mediterranean of Domenico Trevisan's age was a world in upheaval. The Ottomans pushed westward. Spain emerged as a militant Catholic superpower after the Reconquista. The papacy feared Islamic expansion, while also battling Italian rivals. France invaded Italy repeatedly. The Holy Roman Empire pursued influence across Europe. Meanwhile, North African corsairs raided shipping lanes and coastal settlements with terrifying effectiveness. Venice, wealthy yet vulnerable, sat directly within the center of this geopolitical storm. Naval warfare became increasingly critical. Galleys equipped with artillery clashed across contested seas. Fortified ports determined strategic control. Supply lines dictated survival. Storms could destroy fleets before battle even began. And the lives of thousands depended upon decisions made within Venetian council chambers. Domenico Trevisan belonged to a generation forced to confront the reality that Venice's golden age of commercial dominance faced unprecedented challenges. Portuguese exploration around Africa threatened Eastern trade monopolies. Atlantic powers gained wealth. Ottoman expansion restricted Venetian influence in the Levant. And maintaining the Republic's empire became increasingly expensive. Yet Venice refused to surrender its identity. Its people still believed passionately in the Republic. They celebrated its traditions. They defended its institutions. They viewed Venice not merely as a state, but as a civilization uniquely blessed by destiny and protected by St. Mark. This fierce civic pride sustained Venetian resilience even during periods of decline and danger. Behind political titles and public responsibilities stood human beings carrying private fears, disappointments, ambitions, and grief. For noblemen such as Domenico Trevisan, personal life was inseparable from public duty. Marriage strengthened alliances. Family reputation shaped opportunity. Financial pressures remained constant despite aristocratic status, and every action reflected upon the wider lineage. Venetian noble society demanded elegance, discipline, and service. A man who failed politically endangered not only himself, but generations of family prestige. Thus, the psychological burden upon aristocrats could become immense. One imagines Domenico Trevisan enduring sleepless nights during military crises, worrying about whether Venetian defences could withstand Ottoman assault, worrying about economic instability, worrying about factional enemies within the Republic, and worrying about preserving honour in a political environment where mistakes were remembered for decades. Yet Venetian culture also offered extraordinary beauty. Music drifted across canals during festivals. Painters transformed churches into luminous masterpieces. Architects raised magnificent palaces beside the water. Scholars debated philosophy and classical literature. And commerce brought people from across the known world into Venetian streets. This coexistence of refinement and anxiety defined the Republic. Venice was simultaneously dazzling and haunted, and Domenico Trevisan's life unfolded inside that contradiction. As decades passed, the central tragedy confronting many Venetian statesmen became increasingly apparent. The Republic could still survive, but maintaining its former supremacy grew harder with every generation. Trade patterns shifted, empires expanded, military costs increased, competition intensified. The world itself changed, yet Venice fought stubbornly against decline. Its diplomats remained among Europe's finest. Its navy continued defending critical routes. Its ruling class adapted repeatedly. And noble families, such as the Trevisans, continued serving the Republic despite mounting challenges. Domenico Trevisan represented this enduring Venetian spirit, pragmatic, disciplined, politically sophisticated, and fiercely loyal to the state. Though not remembered with the same universal fame as Doges, conquerors, or monarchs, men like him formed the actual machinery through which Venice survived century after century against overwhelming odds. History often glorifies singular heroes while overlooking the administrators, diplomats, financiers, naval officers, and senators who quietly sustained civilizations through perseverance rather than spectacle. Yet republics are not preserved by symbolism alone. They survive because generations of capable individuals dedicate themselves to institutions larger than personal glory. Domenico Trevisan belonged to that tradition. Every Venetian noble understood one brutal truth: the sea that enriched Venice could also destroy it. Storms swallowed fleets, plague devastated populations, wars consumed fortunes and lives, and political favor could disappear almost overnight. The Republic projected magnificence, but beneath its ceremonies lingered awareness of fragility. Perhaps this awareness explains why Venetian culture became so obsessed with grandeur, ritual, architecture, and memory. The Republic constantly celebrated itself because it feared disappearance. Palaces, paintings, churches, public festivals, and civic ceremonies all proclaimed Venetian permanence even while history warned otherwise. Domenico Trevisan lived amid that tension between confidence and anxiety. He belonged to a civilization struggling to preserve its identity within a rapidly transforming world. And though centuries have passed since his era, the emotional reality remains strikingly human. The fear of decline, the burden of responsibility, the clash between ambition and duty, and the determination to defend one's homeland against forces that seem unstoppable. Today, the name Domenico Trevisan survives mostly within the shadows of larger historical narratives, overshadowed by famous doges, admirals, sultans, and kings whose actions reshaped continents. Yet his life represents something essential about the Venetian Republic, and about the men who sustained it through centuries of conflict, diplomacy, and transformation. He belonged to a civilization unlike any other in Europe. A republic born from lagoons, enriched through trade, protected by fleets, governed through oligarchic complexity, and haunted constantly by the fear that one catastrophic war might erase everything generations had built. The Venice of Domenico Trevisan was not merely a beautiful city. It was a fortress of commerce, a laboratory of diplomacy, a theatre of intrigue, a maritime empire fighting desperately to survive within a brutal geopolitical world. And within that world, Trevisan stood as one of countless aristocrats whose intelligence, caution, loyalty, and political skill helped preserve the Republic during one of the most dangerous periods in Mediterranean history. He walked beneath the banners of St. Mark, while empires collided around him. He witnessed the anxiety of senators debating war and peace. He lived in a city where merchants spoke dozens of languages and where spies moved silently through crowded ports. He belonged to a republic whose survival depended not upon destiny alone, but upon the relentless labor of men trained from birth to serve the state. And though time has obscured many details of his life, the larger story remains unforgettable, because Domenico Trevisan symbolizes the hidden backbone of Venice itself, the disciplined nobleman standing quietly behind the splendor, carrying the burden of empire, while the waters of the Adriatic reflected the fading glory of the most serene republic.